Greetings, gents, and welcome to episode 19 of Econoclasm. I've just finished a whole bottle of wine, and that seems to be the only time I do this anymore, so it's time to record an episode. Before I get into the nitty-gritty, I feel super cringe saying this, but drop a like on the video because it does help, and I seem to have stagnated horribly in views, so just like the video to give me some hope of an algorithm boost. But anyway, the leftist, liberals, and Soyboys were out in force over the weekend in a hilarious pro-government protest. Yes, protests that are generally meant to be something you want the government to do differently. Instead, there were massive protests, well, supposedly massive, but I saw one post on Reddit about the massive protest in downtown Pittsburgh that was like 20 people lined up on the side of the street. Now, it could be just the way they took the picture, but if you're going to take a picture to show a massive protest, don't you want to show a little bit more? Pretty sure all the pictures I saw were either only a handful of people or far zoom out of crowds, which I would not put past the left to just use old images of random shit to say that that was their protest, but they were out protesting anyway, and what they were protesting was in favor of the government. It was the hands-off protest. What was it in hands off of? Hands off the government bureaucracy. Hands off, doing anything against the government. No, you have to let the government do whatever they want. You have to let the government be massive and invasive and insanely regulatory. It's hilarious that supposedly the anti-establishment, anti-power left is out there in the streets fighting for the power of the state. It is quite possibly the most pathetic thing that I have ever seen out of any political movement. If you guys want to claim to be any sort of opposition to power, the left really needs to change a lot about itself, because it is basically deep-throating the power of the state and the corporations and the establishment at this point. It is insane, and I don't know how I really don't think anyone does take them seriously anymore outside of themselves and their echo chambers. Comically enough, speaking of leftist echo chambers, let me see if did I get rid of it? I did. But thankfully I posted it to iFunny, so I should have a brief... Yes. So, this was posted on the subreddit r/Austrian Economics on a meme about kind of taking a shit on universal healthcare. To quote eat_cigarettes, quote, "This, among some other big subreddits vaguely involving finance or stocks, are all being used to push right-wing content masquerading as centrism. It fills its niche pretty well. Reddit is extremely political and left-leaning at this time, so there are a lot of contrarians and right-wingers in need of insulating themselves from the rest of the site." End quote. If you're shocked that an Austrian economics subreddit is right-wing, you're very unintelligent as a person. Like, the subreddit dedicated to the free market school of economics doesn't like government-run healthcare, and you're acting like it is some sort of right-wing radicalism is hilarious. Zero understanding of what the thing is, what Austrian economics are. And just acting like anything that isn't wildly pro-left is somehow a right-wing psyop. They're so deep in their echo chambers that something that is very openly on the right wing, as Austrian economics, is a right-wing psyop. These people are wholly unintelligent. Now, I do obviously know some leftists who are intelligent people, and they'll make their points in an intelligent way, but the overwhelming people as a whole are unintelligent, but it seems to be more prevalent amongst the left. They have an insane amount of lack of intelligence. Now, granted, I've seen a lack of intelligence amongst people on the right in regards to tariffs and their hatred of economics and basic logic recently, but nothing to the degree we've seen with these leftists, especially in these hands-off protests. Now, I have an article here from the AP detailing some of the things that the protesters are angry about what the Trump administration is doing. One is fire thousands of federal workers. Yes, the party against state power is upset that thousands of state employees have been fired. People who have been wasting the money of working people through taxes, working on random bullshit, sending it to God knows where to do insanely ridiculous things. But that's okay because it aligns with their political agenda and their evil social policies. It's okay for all these people to have these jobs that drain the impoverished of their money through taxes. But the impoverished don't pay taxes. They still pay on purchases. And they pay throughout the production structure how taxes are factored into final prices. Don't be stupid. Imagine going out there and protesting in favor of government employees. Such a ridiculous and pathetic thing to do. Federal workers are the enemy of everything good in the world. They take your tax monies with inflated salaries far above what they would earn in the private sector because no one values these ridiculous lack of skills. I don't even want to call it skills for the most part. And they take these massive salaries that are paid for by taxpayers and they continually make the lives of everyone worse at their jobs. But that's a real problem, and we need to protest in their favor. No, these people deserve to have their lives ruined and be thrown out in the streets because they're spending their lives fucking over everyone in these government agencies. I'm very happy to see thousands of federal workers now unemployed. They can go fuck themselves. They deserve no sympathy, no love, and I cannot believe anyone on this earth would actually protest in their favor. Fuck every single one of them. I'm not going to be shy about that. I don't like federal employees. No rational, sane, moral person should. But what about their families? Do you think they give a shit about you or your families? No, they don't care about anyone. They take their massive salaries. They do their little gay regulations that squash the lives of millions of people. And they'll laugh about it. They're all just absolutely ridiculous people that... Well, not all. I do have a friend who works for the federal government. He's a good guy. But probably the only one. But aside from him, they're all just ridiculous people who don't deserve an ounce of sympathy. And then the next point on here is close Social Security Administration field offices. I'm not in the least bit upset about that. Social Security needs to go as a whole. It is the literal definition of a Ponzi scheme. Bernie Madoff spent the last years of his life in prison for running a scheme that is exactly identical to Social Security. The people who bought in first are being paid by the people who are just buying in now. If anything, I'm upset that Social Security isn't being abolished by the Trump administration. I remember back in, I don't know if it was his 2016 campaign or his 2020 campaign, but he was talking about how he will not touch Social Security, and that was one of the things I harped on him for, because he refused to touch Social Security, a literal Ponzi scheme that is pulling money out of working people to pay for the elderly. Now, you can argue all you want in favor of helping the elderly, but not at the point of a gun and stealing money from people who are desperately living paycheck to paycheck. You want to help the elderly? Get rid of property taxes where people can have their homes and not have to worry about paying the state for the rest of their lives. That's a way to help the elderly. Or stop the ridiculous intentional inflation that the Federal Reserve chases in an attempt to drive consumption. Yeah, to anyone who wants to complain that consumerism is a byproduct of capitalism, no, it's a product of Keynesianism and the Federal Reserve and central banking intentionally inflating the currency because they want consumerism, because Keynesianism believes that the aggregate demand, purchases, buying, drives an economy. No, it's saving and investing. That's what drives an economy. That's what capitalism is. That's what free market Austrian economics is. Where the hell was I going with all this? I know I'm talking about Social Security, but how did I go off on that tangent? But you're not going to see a single one of these hands-off protesters talking about inflation or property tax, because they don't give a shit about actually finding solutions. No, all they care about is what the state-run, well, I guess if you suppose Trump's in power now, but it's the deep state-run media. What the deep state-run media tells them to be upset over. People have no original thoughts of their own. They only parrot media talking points, or what they see on Reddit or Twitter. There's no intelligence amongst these people. They are literally just parrots of power. So no, they don't care about helping the elderly. They care about what the power structure wants them to care about. You need to abolish Social Security, get rid of the Ponzi scheme, and get money back in the hands of working people who desperately need the money that's being taken from Social Security. People who are working now, for the most part, aren't going to see Social Security. You might have people in their 50s and 60s who might, but people in their 20s and 30s, they're definitely not. The Ponzi scheme is running bankrupt. And what are they going to do then, when that's out? And people say, hey, I spent decades paying into this, where's my money? Oh, but they're going to say, oh, it's not there, and these people who, are out there in the streets protesting in favor of Social Security are going to find some weird boogeyman that the media points them towards to say that's why it's empty. Trump, the corporations, whoever. And really the fault is the Ponzi scheme that is run by the Social Security Administration. Also on a point of the idea for Social Security, the retirement age is 65, and it has been that way since Social Security was implemented by Captain Cripple, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now, the life expectancy when Social Security was first implemented was 64 years. The average person was expected to be dead before they collected Social Security. Now the average life expectancy is around 78, 79. Social Security retirement age has not changed. So people are living 14, 15 years longer and getting all that Social Security. At the very least, if you want to keep Social Security, you need to raise the retirement age to 80, because that's what the original point of Social Security was people who were past the point of where they were initially supposed to live, and they were in their old age beyond what they were expected to live, and that's when you start taking care of them. Not these people who just never saved for retirement and then just expect the young people to take care of them. Especially now with these boomers who don't give two shits about the young people and are doing everything in their power to screw them over. Next, in this AP article. It's another article I want to look at, but I'm going through the AP right now. Effectively shutter entire agencies. All these agencies need to go. USAID, Department of Education. These aren't doing anything to benefit people. They're just propaganda arms of the state, of the deep state. Oh, but again, that's what the left likes. The left is in bed with the state. The left worships the institutions of the state. Now, the right does worship the enforcers of the state, the police and military, but the left worships the institutions of the state. And so they're protesting in favor of the institutions of the state, because they're upset that Trump is shuttering government agencies. Agencies that, again, like those federal workers, they take your money and they fuck you over. I see all these posts about people mocking the state of education. Like, oh, you want to close the Department of Education? Yeah, because the Department of Education sucks. It's been getting worse the whole time the Department of Education has existed. People have been getting dumber and dumber over time. The Department of Education is not doing its job. You could very well argue that some of the dumbest people in this country work in the Department of Education. I hope they go unemployed. I hope they go broke. And I hope that the government denies them welfare. You are dumbing down this country. You are making this country far worse off. I have zero sympathy for you if you're a former employee of the Department of Education. I hope that department shutters and never reopens. It needs to go. Education has been severely plummeting in this country, and we've been focusing on teaching 5-year-olds how to have transgender gay sex rather than how to say the ABCs or the basics of addition. It's absolutely ridiculous. Government agencies are the worst things in the world. Government has 3 main purposes: enforce contracts, protect rights, and defend from invaders. That's it. Anything else is not necessary and is an infringement on the rights of the people, and just government expanding its power. So these agencies need to go. And then the deportation of immigrants. It's funny how it just says immigrants here. No, they're not going after immigrants, although I wish they would, because I don't really care if you're legal or illegal. The United States is certainly not overpopulated. Overpopulation is a myth by what was his name? Paul Ehrlich? The butterfly scientist, Paul Ehrlich. I remember Dr. Rittenauer, he had a great just shoot down of his argument about overpopulation. I need to reach out to him and ask about it. But no, overpopulation is a myth. So we're not overpopulated, but we don't need floods of millions of people coming in and overrunning the country and trying to not assimilate, jump onto welfare, and change the demographics. But the administration is going after illegal immigrants, people who are outright invading the country and jumping on welfare as soon as they get here. The Biden administration loved handing out free money to illegal immigrants. Thousands of dollars a month in free housing, free food, just free debit cards. It was absolutely ridiculous while Americans were living paycheck to paycheck and struggling to survive. Honestly, I wouldn't blame Americans if they revolted against the illegal immigrants, but the Trump administration is just deporting them, but that's too much for these leftists. Invaders, or now that there's, I don't know exactly what the chart is called, but there's a chart to show the levels of empathy between the right and left. And the right tends to have more empathy for their family and neighbors and people they're close to, whereas the left tends to have more empathy for foreigners and people they have no idea about. It's honestly insane, where if you know a leftist, they care more about some random nobody in sub-Saharan Africa than they do their wife or their child. Absolutely backwards thinking and outright evil thinking, honestly. Oh, well, I'll let my child be murdered if it means that maybe some third worlder gets a free debit card with a few $1,000s. These leftists are pathetic creatures, not worthy of any sort of respect. No. These immigrants flooding the country that are either hopping on welfare, raping, murdering, robbing innocent Americans. No, they're the real victims in all this. They're the ones we need to have sympathy for. No, get them the fuck out of here. Worry about making everything better for American citizens. And then we can start worrying about foreigners. Once everyone in the United States is living a quality life. That's the purpose of a fucking government. I've always said that right-wingers should run governments and left-wingers should run charities. Because the left wants to run the government like a charity. It's not a charity. It is a government. Stop trying to be generous with everyone's money, time, resources, and lives. Sorry, I don't want to get murdered by an illegal because you wanted to feel good with your liberal friends. Fuck off. You want to help these poor people? Go travel to their countries and help them out. Don't demand I let them live in my neighborhoods and stab me to death over $3. This one might be my favorite. Scale back protections for transgender people. Hang on, this has a hyperlink. Let me see what it says when I open it, because I haven't done it before. Oh, jeez. Under the new Trump administration, this year's Transgender Day of Visibility has a different tenor. Day of Visibility. No one wants to see you people. So I don't care about your day of visibility. Stay in the shadows. You're disgusting to look at. Yeah, here. Donald Trump used contentiousness around transgender people's access to sports and bathrooms to fire up conservative voters and sway undecideds. Yeah, because people don't like seeing their daughters getting the shit beat out of them by men. People don't like men going to the bathrooms with their wives and daughters because these men are mentally ill, throw on a dress and a wig, and want to go and molest or assault women. Yeah, if that's problematic to you people, you have a fucking problem. I don't care what you identify as. There is a biological difference between men and women. And overwhelmingly transgender men, or men who identify as women, which would be transgender women if you want to use the official terminology, tend to be perverts who are using their gender identity to be predators against women. The party that supposedly is so pro-woman, go away, I don't want to hear your ad. The party that's supposedly so pro-woman that they're letting these women get assaulted and molested and raped because, oh, well, we need to let these mentally ill men feel good. We can't hurt their feelings. No, they can fuck off. Oh, but Trump's removed mention of transgender people from government websites. Yeah, because what the fuck is the government involved in that for? They don't need to mention them. It's absolutely ridiculous that people are buying into this. Oh, transgender people are less than 1% of the population, yet they become such a contentious issue. Yes, because they're being forced on everyone. Because the left is trying to force the idea that these people are perfectly sane and rational and normal people and let them into women's spaces. Yeah, the left made this point, and they have to deal with the blowback from it. These are mentally ill people who use their mental illness for their own perversion. Get them the fuck out of women's spaces. Get them out of women's sports. Get them out of women's bathrooms. But the left wants to uphold it and make it a sacred issue. Fuck off. No, I don't want women getting assaulted and molested and raped. It's insane that that's a radical right-wing position. But apparently it is. And that shows you the delusion of the left. The last thing on the AP article is cut funding for health programs. Health programs. Here, a federal judge will temporarily block President Donald Trump's administration from cutting billions of federal dollars to support COVID-19 initiatives. COVID-19. It's 2025 and we're still talking about COVID-19. We should stop talking about that by the end of 2020. If you're still focused on COVID, you are just showing that you're a media mouthpiece. It is hilarious that you're still talking about it. And the overall concept about cutting health programs. Look, it's not the government's job to be involved in healthcare, no matter what you say. Oh, but healthcare is a human right. Okay, fine. When's Bernie Sanders paying for my medical procedures? Paying for my dentist visits, my PCP visits? You know what a human right means? It means it is guaranteed to you. So if healthcare is a human right, that means you can force healthcare providers at the point of a gun to provide their services for free. Who wants to point a gun at a doctor and say, you are required to see this patient, and you will get nothing for it, and if you refuse, I will shoot you? Because that's really what the idea of healthcare being a human right is saying. Healthcare is not a human right. No service or good is a human right. Your rights are things life, liberty, property. If you really want to narrow it down to one, property. You own yourself, and no one has the right to infringe on your right to yourself. But the left loves infringing on yourself. It's deep financial and job cuts of federal agencies to transgender rights. Fuck off. Look, the massive, overwhelming prices for healthcare, love has to complain all the time about how deep people go into medical debt for healthcare costs. That's a result of government's involvement in the healthcare industry. So if anything, cutting funding for health programs might actually lessen the burden on people. If you get government out of healthcare, what's going to happen? Oh, well, a free market in healthcare is going to develop, in which case providers have to compete with each other for better service and better prices. What does that do? That brings prices down. But no, we can't have that. We need to spend insane levels of taxpayer money on this so that people can have quote-unquote free healthcare. So it's got to spend, 25 times the amount that it should cost in terms of taxpayer money. Because at the end, it's a partnership where the government pays for it and hospitals and healthcare providers can up the cost, the prices, because they know the government's paying for it. And then if you go to Canada, they'll tell you just to kill yourself instead of getting healthcare. If you go to most places, they'll say, oh, okay, well, you have this life-threatening health problem. Well, we'll see you in a year and a half because everything's so backlogged because there's no price system. It's free, so everyone's just getting whatever they can all the time. But we don't care that your problem is life-threatening. Unless you're, an infant, in which case we're just going to sentence you to death. Fuck you, UK. I honestly would love to see London under a mushroom cloud. They would absolutely deserve it. We're a despicable city in a despicable country at this point. The United Kingdom is absolutely pathetic and evil. They're turning into Australia from 1984. Any rational human being should despise that country, and that city, and that government. Now over to the NPR article about the hands-off protest. Already touched on the mass firing of federal workers to immigration raids, blah, 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 blah. To the involvement of billionaire Elon Musk in the federal government. Gee, the left doesn't like billionaires involved in the federal government? I don't recall them getting upset over George Soros, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos. They never complained about any of that. No, because the left has absolutely zero principles. They don't give two shits about consistency in their thinking. They are the embodiment of cognitive dissonance. Oh, we have a problem with this billionaire involved in the government. Yeah, this particular billionaire, because he's attacking your precious government institutions and actually trying to do things that benefit you. But again, you are only media and institutional mouthpieces who have no original thoughts of your own, no critical thinking, who are just standing up and angry that your precious government institutions are under threat. You didn't care when Mark Zuckerberg was attacking anyone who went against the regime's ideas of what the truth was, quote-unquote truth, which most of it has come out to be wrong at this point. No, you didn't care when that billionaire was suppressing any dissenting opinion about what was actually lies, and people were out there saying what was true. No, you cared about what the media was saying was the truth, and you wanted anything opposed to it to be suppressed, because you can only take what the media says as true. You have no ability to think for your own. Well, listen to the experts, except for the experts that are pushed off of social media and off of the media by the billionaires. You people, get on your knees for billionaires if they agree with you. Don't act like you're upset at a billionaire involved with the government. You've been worshiping and calling for billionaires to get involved in the government if it benefits you, if it sides with your opinions, if it sides with your institutions. I swear, the left is so unintelligent that someone with Down syndrome, you could take a railroad spike, drive it into the brain of someone with Down syndrome, and they would still be more intelligent than your average leftist out there on the streets in these hands-off protests. They have no principles. They have no original thoughts. As I've said probably a dozen times already. They only do what they're told to. They are parrots for power. They're all around unrespectable people. They don't deserve to be given a thought in the political process. If you hear one of these people trying to speak up, just brush them off, because you can go to any of the thousands of them and you'll get the exact same words. Because all they do is take their marching orders from the media and the institutions, take their talking points and parrot them. Because they can't come up with anything on their own. They just do what they're told. Absolutely insane and ridiculous to see. What is this? Here's a sign at the hands-off protest. Free speech is an American right. That is hilarious. That a left-wing hands-off protest would have that sign. How many things they want people canceled or thrown in prison for saying. Or they want the government and the billionaires to silence people for saying. But free speech is a human right. Now, granted, the Trump administration does go after anyone speaking out against Israel, but aside from that, the right or the left is the largest opponent of free speech. It is hilarious. What does this dude's shirt say? Get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. You're not getting in any sort of good or necessary trouble. You're just some old dude screaming on the street over complete and utter bullshit. It is hilarious to see these leftists think they have any sort of care or principle or logical consistency to any of these ideas. These people don't deserve respect. They are literally shock troopers for the most evil regime in human history. I don't care about their protests. I don't care about you crying hands off of this evil government. It needs to go, and I'm glad somebody's finally taking an axe to it, and I wish they were taking a much larger axe to it much faster. My only gripe with Elon is that he isn't slashing faster. He isn't slashing more. But that would somehow probably get me called a Nazi. Yeah, a lot of these protesters are calling Elon and Trump Nazis because, if there's one thing the Nazis really care about, it's shrinking the size of government. And standing against anti-Semitism and supporting Israel. Yeah, that's real. Those are the stances of Nazis. So fucking stupid. It is hilarious how objectively dumb these people are. Anyway, fuck them. I hope they all move to Europe and get subjected to Russian invasion after Trump pulls out of NATO and lets Europe deal with its own problems. Because then the world global IQ will raise quite a few points. Maybe Western civilization could be saved without these people involved. But that'll be it for the drunken rant. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to drop a like if you haven't yet, because as cringe as it is to say, it does help. Catch you next time.